Good morning, everyone. Before I get into the research which we've done, I just want to do a very quick introduction about Marketreach, in case, incredibly, there are any of you who haven't heard of us and aren't aware of what we do. Marketreach is part of Royal Mail, but really what we are is separate from Royal Mail in that we're the marketing authority on commercial mail for all users of mail and door drop. And our job is to promote the magic of mail to organizations of all shapes and sizes so that they can use mail effectively. And a key part of my role as head of insight and planning is to develop and share the research and the thought leadership that we do across the marketing and print and everybody connected who might be involved with mail development and production, so that we're focused on why and how mail works. What we do is really provide comprehensive knowledge and support for the industry, and that ranges from a deep strategic knowledge, as I said, as to how mail works and why, helping people get the most out of mail, critically recognizing that mail is one of many media channel choices, so not mail alone, but how mail works in a multimedia world, critically helping brands optimize the creative performance, and being leaders in new ideas and innovation for the mail industry. As I said, a key part of my specific role within Marketreach is involved with the insight and the research that we do into the power of mail. Any of you who've been around for a while in this industry may well be aware of our first big piece of research, which incredibly is now 10 years old, which was the private life of mail and to how and why mail works. And we've done a vast number of studies since then, which include everything from mail and other media, so why mail works in a media world, our physically irresistible piece on mail's creative impact, so the most creative mail campaigns in the UK, and our most recent research, which is what I'm going to share with you today, which is Landslide, how mail won in the general election. And all of these reports and many more are available on our website, marketreach.co.uk, where hopefully many of you will have been already, and you can get these, as I said, and more. So moving on to what you came here to listen to this morning, I wanted to share with you our most recent research, which was Landslide, how mail swept the board for political parties in the 2024 general election. And where this research came from is that everybody had been saying that 2024 was going to be the first truly digital general election. So it was important for us to understand what in the world that was going to mean for mail. But the challenge of that is, if you ask people what they think of mail outside of a general election, you don't really get great insight because people are kind of guessing what they think they need to do. So it was important for us to be able to run this research during the election. So we actually got people when they were in the act of thinking about the election and knowing what they were doing to engage with it. So we were all set to run this research, and then Rishi Sunak surprised us by calling a snap election in July. But incredibly, we were able to get our research into the field within a week. What we ran was nationally represented research to look at UK election voting during the general election. We actually ran 4 waves. So we ran that quick early piece that was in market in the first week of the election. We then ran 2 further waves of research during the election, asking people about what they thought, and then a post-election wave while they looked back at what they thought they'd done. We spoke to nearly 4,000 adults, age 16 plus, because we wanted to understand young people and young people looking into the future of voting, that they'd gotten about their things from political parties and candidates. And we boosted samples for age and for devolved nations. So we were really able to talk to people, and we did both a quantitative survey, and we also ran some qualitative panels in certain areas. So what's really important to us when we do a piece of research is kind of what's the essence, what's the big message of what we learned. And what we were so pleased to see in this one is that for any successful election communication strategy, you simply have to include mail. And that was not just even, but especially in a digital world. And I think what we proved once and for all with this research is that it wasn't, in fact, a digital election. We like to think that it was a mail election. So let me tell you why it is we think that. We came up with 6 key findings from this, as I said, that really focus on political parties who forget the importance of mail, really do so at their peril. And the reasons why is because mail remains the dominant medium in an election. Powerfully, that's because it's really highly trusted. People aren't suspect about it. They don't think it's a scam. It's not coming. They know where it's coming from. Mail gets considered. It doesn't get ignored. It is the most engaging and the most read mediums of all the mediums that we tested, and we explored a lot. Importantly, it's used and loved by all ages, and importantly, most engaged with, as you'll see in the findings I'm going to share, by younger voters, and also was the most recalled campaign channel of all of the ones that we explored. Because I've just got a limited period of time this morning, I'm just going to explore 3 of these findings, the ones that are highlighted on this slide. But as I said, the full report's on our website, or you can get in touch with me if you want to see the full results. So thinking about the impact mail had, we asked people what the most impactful channels they engaged with in deciding what party to vote for, and they could provide their top 3. And what came out top was mail. That was the one that they thought of, that was the one that they remembered and that they highlighted. Interestingly, the next one down, even as people claim TV is dying, was TV and party political broadcasts. And then while there are lots of other channels, as you'll see, coming in at that. So again, it's important to think of the world as a multi-channel, multimedia world. None of them came even close to what was going on with mail, with social media down and online ads less than 1/3. So mail really stood out as the one that voters thought of and looked at. And what makes it a dominant media is that, as I said, it gets through to all voters. Everyone gets it. It can go to all homes. It stands out and grabs attention. It's the channel that is most likely to be read and to be shared and talked about. As I said, it's really trustworthy. It proved to be almost twice as trustworthy as any other channel that we tested. And voters see it as really relevant. It's about the issues that voters care about because it's personalized. It's able to be very local in an election that's both national and local in terms of the importance of what's going on. We talk about local elections, and it's seen as very significant. And as I said, we did some qualitative research, and we got this great quote. I actually think my feelings towards receiving information on the election by post has changed. I used to think it was annoying, but now consider it to be enlightening and informative. So it was cutting through to people and actually changing their opinions because they could see its importance. And the idea that mail is considered, not ignored. We hear so many times from consumers when we just speak to them randomly, they take their mail, they immediately throw it in the bin. And while people may think that's what they do, all of our research shows that's not, in fact, what they do. They pick it up, they look at it, they put it in specific places, they save it until they're ready to look at it, and it does get through. It's not ignored. Because mail makes voters, mail in this case, and particularly in the election, but really all mail, it makes people think. It's more than 50% more effective than making them think about voting intention than any other channel that we explored. And a key part of that is that voters get to control how and when they engage with it. They can keep it, they can read it when they have the time and attention to do so. They can reread it because it's retained. It doesn't just disappear the way that social and email and things do, where they just roll down your feed or TV comes on and then it's gone. It's got real standout. It stands out on the doormat. It's not lost in a crowded feed or an inbox. And we're able to see that it's concise, it's visual, it's easy to identify what it is and why it's important. And as I said, it's the only medium that you can still really target locally. So it goes to the constituency level. It allows the content to be personalized about what's going to be important to people. And people recognize that and really valued it for that. And then lastly, the age thing. The perception of mail sadly continues to be that it's a channel for older people. And every piece of research we do, we look at it across ages, and every piece of research we do shows how powerful mail is with younger audiences. And this research was exactly along those lines. It was no exception. So we asked people what actions they took related to the political information that they received by mail. And what you can see on this chart is that the younger audiences were much more likely to do something with the mail that they received, to read it, to talk about it, to share it, to put it aside so that they could go back to it later than they were with any other kind of channel. And in that 65% bar sits lots of channels, all the social media channels. There was nothing else that had a higher score for this than mail did. And what's interesting is, as well, when you look at the other age groups, you see mail was extremely high for them as well, but they were all kind of at the 68 to 70% range for mail, whereas you've got this 81% for younger voters. They thought the election was important. They felt that they were able to get the information they needed from mail, and they really engaged with it. And it's because election mail is inclusive. It goes to everybody, and that's where these days so much other media falls down, because it targets, so social is much more engaged with very specific, smaller audiences. So as I said, even the youngest age groups showed very high levels of engagement with mail. 81%, as I showed before, said that they engaged with mail. That was higher than social media, posters, online advertising, and party political broadcasts. And what was really interesting is more than a quarter of voters reported that they kept mail packs until just before the election. So it had a really long shelf life. They held on to it so they could refer back to it. What our research showed was that about 50% of the voters we spoke to were open to changing their vote at some point during the election, and often up until the day that they voted. So what we saw is that they were holding on to their mail as a way to go back and see what the different parties were saying and help them make up their minds. So this long shelf life had a real value in what was going on, because it kept the parties that had used mail top of mind and easy to engage with. So we also looked at the mail that was there to see how it was working and why it was working. Because I think what's always critical to remember is it doesn't just work because it's mail. It works because it's good mail, because it's mail that's doing powerful things and engaging with people. And what we saw when we looked at the graph that was out there is that there were some really strong things that good election mail was doing. It was color-coded, so people were able to recognize who it was coming from, and that cut through for them. It gave messages that were simple and concise so that they could see what the arguments were, what was going on. It was easy to read. The text was big enough so that it really cut through and it delivered the messages. And it could have the right information on it. So it was also very detailed and delivered the messages people were interested in. So making mail effective, what was it when we looked at all of the research in this piece that really voters valued for mail? And as you'll see, there were a lot of reasons why it really stood out in this. Mail was wanted by voters. People told us that they expected it, and in fact, they even anticipated the mail coming in an election. They assume that the parties are going to communicate this way, and they're looking for it. The timing is crucial because it allows people to have it and to hold it right up to Election Day. It can be highly targeted, which makes it really powerful. The messaging can be personalized at very local levels and up to household and street levels if need be. Age is important. Election mail was valued by every age, from the newest to the oldest voters. And somebody in the office, actually, his daughter was voting for the first time. And what he discovered is that mail was being delivered to his house, addressed to his daughter and to him. It looked like it was the same in the envelope. It came from the same party, but his daughter was being targeted with an entirely different set of messages than he was. So that targeting can go on at a household level if the parties are using the data that they have well. Design is crucial. As I said, it's not just mail, it's good mail. So color coding, images, structure of what's going on. Tone matters. It helps to explain. Mail allows you to give facts. But also a lot of people told us what they liked about mail is it wasn't engaged in negativity as much as a lot of the other channels saw. So they expected it to be clear and direct. As I said at the beginning, integration is important. So it wasn't just mail alone. Where the people who used mail effectively, they used it as part of a whole integrated plan. So other channels were engaging nationally, they were engaging through other channels. So it was part of that. And also it's a sustainable medium. So people who used it well considered sustainability at every stage. But lastly, you don't have to take just my word for it. We were so pleased. We asked Andrew Marr, a well-known journalist and broadcaster, if he would write the introduction for this report. We gave him the results that we had, and he wrote his own introduction, which fascinatingly said exactly what we had found, which is that he too had expected this to be a digital election, and seeing the results of this and looking at the mail, completely understood that he too had made an assumption that was wrong, saying elections are national, sometimes even global events, but in our parliamentary system, they are first of all local ones. We want a direct emotional connection between ourselves and the candidates, and ultimately the MP. Mail arrives at an actual address, not an IP address, a physical postcode, not a digital identifier. Something I can hold in my hand, not something only held briefly in the mind's eye. This report is a welcome dose of reality, a happy corrective. So thank you very much for listening this morning.